Hello and welcome. I am Sarah June, CEO and head coach of June Coaching Company, where you find out what your body is capable of. So, we primarily focus on ultra running, trail running, strength, and anywhere leading up to ultra running. We help you achieve your goals and find out what you are capable of. So, in this video, I am going to be answering questions from Flagstaff Crest 39. I went on Instagram. If you don't already follow me on Instagram at sarah.june, I post a lot of stuff on my journey of ultra running, as well as some of the things that my clients and our athletes are going through and triumphs they are achieving as well. But on there, I put it in my story and on my feed of questions to be answered for my Flagstaff Crest 39 that I did this past weekend. And I got a bunch of good questions. So I'm going to go over quite a few of them. There were some duplicates, so I didn't put in the duplicates. Let's just dive right in and get started with it. So, first question, does it follow the Cocodona 250 course? If you followed Cocodona, amazing. It was so fun to watch the live stream. I love how they do that. Aerovipa puts that on and does the live streams. It is so cool to watch. But yes and no, there's certain sections that it does follow the 125 for a little bit. It follows the 250 for a little bit. And then Flagstaff Crest has their own little section that they do that neither of those races do either. So I actually found some maps and I'm going to go through those. Going from Flagstaff Crest 39. So this is the map of Flagstaff Crest 39. And if you can see, get an idea of this like in and out, up and around, right? So then we go to Flagstaff Crest 39 and the 250. If you look, that this is the same highway. So you start out by doing this very same as the 250ers. And then there's a turn around what is it? Walnut Canyon, somewhere around here, or Bow and Arrow, excuse me. Then Flagstaff Crest takes a left here where the Cocodona 250 continues on and does the Eldon's Crest, finishing in Heritage Square. Flagstaff Crest doesn't go on to Eldon's Crest anymore because of permitting issues. It does a different mountain a little bit left. So this is the mountain over here that the Flagstaff Crest goes on, and then the 250 does the mountain over here. So it's a little different. But as far as the 125, if we look at these two together. So 125 starts Fort Tuthill is where we are here. And then I would say within the first mile, they veer off with each other. Flagstaff Crest goes to the right and the 120 Sedona's Canyon's 125 goes to the left. But we do actually meet back up. So the Flagstaff Crest is over here, and then it comes back over to the right-hand side. So we do actually from mile, let's see, where was that? So that's mile, I would say right around a little less than a halfway point. So I think it's like around mile 14-ish is where we meet back up together. And then the rest of the course is the same as the Sedona Canyon's 125. So it's really cool, actually, to be able to see those individuals. I got so much joy like running by the 250ers when we were on the same course with the 250s, and then the 125s, like just giving them like some positive encouragement. A lot of them were moving pretty decent. Some of them were not. You tell them they're looking great and they're looking strong and they need to keep going, and it helps them get through. It was really cool to see a lot of the other runners on the course as well. All right. So that was that question. So what's the competitive nature? So it's actually pretty competitive, not actually going to lie. So I have some of the race stats written down in front of me as well. There were 80 men and 90 women that completed the race. Also, another handful that didn't quite make it or didn't even start. But 80 men, 90 women completed the Flagstaff Crest 39. The top male, his name was Trueheart Brown. He had an average pace of 6:47, and finished in 4:24:59. So pretty good clip there. Women, the first woman crossing the finish line was Mary Mickler with an average pace of 9:51 and a time of 6:24:49. So pretty darn fast. And typically the top 3 finished the race within 40 minutes of each other. So it was pretty competitive. It wasn't like neck and neck the whole time, but it was fast. It definitely was. There was a 27-hour cutoff, and I think the last person who finished the Flagstaff Crest 39 took 21 hours. That is commendable. Being out there for 21 hours. Can you imagine being out there for 21 hours? That is awesome. So that is that question. Did I feel prepared for it? And did you prepare for the elevation as well? Or how did I prepare for it? So my actual training has been really unconventional for this past 5 months. So at the beginning of the year, I was still working full time in a hospital and coaching full time and running the business. So I had my time spread pretty thin for training. So I knew that for 2 reasons. I knew that I wanted to just keep a base mileage that I could do a 50K or a 50 miler once a month and just keep it consistent. Now, knowing that you're going to have to take like an easy week leading up to the race and a week after the race to recover, that leaves only half the month to actually put in training, right? Like quality volume training. Did I have a great prep for this? No, because I was racing every month leading up to this, which is not ideal. You can't get in great training blocks. You're always just like either recovering or taking it easy leading up to a race. I did do I still did 5 to 6 days of running, 2 to 3 days of strength training. And that is where the difference made. Your durability is going to skyrocket when you do strength training. So I highly recommend strength training, and I would do strength training on the same days that I run. Now, is it absolutely necessary? No. Do I have runners that we have coordinated a way to still get in quality training runs and get in strength training on separate days? Yeah, absolutely. That's possible. We just have to make sure that you're not compromising your run workouts because you're too sore from the strength training itself. So, my preparation, long run on the weekend, and then basically a recovery run. I didn't do back to back long runs leading up to this one. I just did a single long run on the weekend, up to 5 hours. So, 2 weeks before the race, I did a 5 hour long run. And honestly, that run was not fun. My brain wasn't in it. My head wasn't in it. My heart wasn't in the race or in the training run. So, that was a little discouraging. But when I'm out there racing, staying in the moment is the biggest thing. So staying in the moment and just thinking about the section of the race that you're in, aid station to aid station, that's all I focus on. And in the moment, making sure that I'm not tripping over myself, which I still did. Prep for it. I did 1 to 2 days of interval training, one long run, and I strength trained 3 days a week, typically on the harder days or on the long run day. Did I prepare for the elevations? Yeah, I live in Phoenix and it's 3,000 feet elevation. So, on a physiological level, that isn't technically elevation. So, it's not going to elicit any sort of plasma volume change on a biologic level. It doesn't change. Once you get to about 5,000, 6,000, that's when that change starts occurring. Being that the race elevation, the highest point was 7,395 feet, which is about equivalent to about 2,300 meters. And then the lowest point was 6,800 feet, and that's about meters above sea level. So the elevation does kick your butt. You're going to be breathing a little bit heavier. You're closer to the sun. The sun on your skin is just more intense. So that's something that you also have to think about. But in terms of physiology, I did do heat training. So heat training can help with elevation. Whatever's going to help increase your blood plasma volume is going to actually help you perform better at elevation because of the oxygen that you can carry in your blood. So, if you can carry more oxygen, you're going to get more oxygen when you are huffing and puffing at elevation when quote unquote air is thinner. So, I did heat training leading up to this. So, I did a good stimulus. I don't know, I would say probably a 5 days a week. I've been doing it for the last like several months. So at this moment, leading up to this race, like the week or the month leading up to this race, I was already heat acclimated. So I already was doing sauna sessions. So I was just doing prep or just maintenance for the race itself. So I was doing about 20 minutes or so, 20, 25 minutes, 3 days a week. Whenever I went and did strength training, I went straight down to the sauna and did the sauna after strength training while my body heat was already warm, so I don't have to stay there in there quite as long. So I did that to help the heat training to help me prepare for the elevation. My sister-in-law lives in Flagstaff, so every once in a while I go up there and I run. So I know how my body responds. So that it's usually in terms of breathing a little bit heavier. Your heart rate doesn't necessarily elevate, but your breathing rate accelerates. At least that's what I experience. So I knew what to expect when I was out there, but you get more dehydrated at elevation. So keeping up on your electrolytes and keeping up on your fluids is really important when you're at higher elevation. Next one, what was your strategy for race day? My strategy, I have 3 things that I implement for my strategy. The first one being running my own race, and knowing what that means is, for me, it's going off of RPE. I'm not going to be super concerned with my heart rate. I'm not going to be super concerned with other runners. It's running my own race, staying in my RPE. So I let people pass me and I don't let it irritate me. Like, it doesn't drive that inner competition. Actually, it does, but I know better because you don't respond early on. The race doesn't start until halfway point. So my strategy was to maintain an RPE 2 to 3. So that's a recovery endurance effort the entire time. The only exception to that was going to be the last 5 miles where it was downhill. And if I had more in the tank at that point, I was going to be like, all right, 5 miles left. I am going to give it all I have to get through that finish line. So I stuck to it. I stayed at an RPE 2-3 the entire race. Once it came to that 5 mile mark, if you haven't already watched my recap on my previous video, my previous YouTube video, I'll link it here, maybe if I can figure out how to do that. But I started cramping in that last section. 1, I ran out of water, and 2, I didn't have enough electrolytes. So my inner hamstrings, so they were actually my adductors, were cramping. So I wasn't about to push harder because I was already like on the verge of all cramping that entire last section, the last 11 miles. So I just cruised it to the end. I just, 1, didn't have water, and 2, I was like, I am just gonna like cruise to the end. I don't want to cramp. I'm in a good position. So strategy there was to just keep going at a consistent pace. Once I hit downtown, when I was actually in downtown Flagstaff coming into Heritage Square, that's when I was like, all right, I'm going to let the engines go a little bit. And I just revved it. I also got hit by a car like less than a block from the finish line. Someone just wasn't paying attention. They were at a 4-way stop, and she was young, and she just like guns it through the intersection. And I'm going through the intersection, and she slams on her brakes, and everyone was around. But that was that last section. I just took off and started running. I think it was like a 9 something pace. So nothing crazy, but that felt really good at the end as well. Strategy, run your own race, keep the RPE where it seems manageable for the entire time. And then the last strategy was just to keep fueling my body, knowing that I'm at higher elevation. I'm going to be needing more water than I typically do. You typically need to have 15% more liquid on board when you're at elevation. So knowing that I needed more water than normal, more electrolytes than normal. Your carbs run hotter. So I just made sure that I was staying up on all of my things. And I just ran out of water because I filled every single bottle I had at that last aid station and it still wasn't enough. Lesson learned for the next one, that any 2-hour section, I need a bladder. That was the strategy for Flagstaff Crest 39. So, what did my fueling look like? Okay. And then, how do I get better at fueling? My GI tract tends to shut down after 5 hours. So, fueling, I used cis beta fuel powder, not gels. I've used the powder. And so, my goal was to have one packet of 80 grams of carbs per hour. I was out there for 7.5 hours. So I was going to need a total of 8 packets. So that was what I was aiming for. I think I had a total of 7, but I always had gels on me as a backup. So if I just wasn't feeling the carbs or I wasn't feeling the drink mix at the time, I would be able to take a gel. And those gels, some of those gels did actually have caffeine. So that was also a strategy that I used. About halfway through, I started taking those gels every once in a while. It wasn't strategic by any means. It was just whenever I felt like my body needed carbohydrates and needed a little pick me up, I took one with caffeine in it. I had a total of 7 of the Beta Fuels, and then I believe I had a total of 5 BPN Go gels. Fueling, that's what I did for fueling, as well as hydrating and electrolytes. So I always lump electrolytes in with fueling as well. Personally, I need 1,200 milligrams per hour ish. Maybe I need more, but that's what I've deduced down to 1,200 milligrams. So I use capsules instead of mixing it within my bottles, like a powder to dissolve in my bottles. So I have 400 milligram capsules and I take 2 at the top of every hour and then 1 at the half hour. Now, I do have to admit that I'm really good with that during training runs. When it comes to a race, I'm like, 1, in a new environment that I'm usually not in. There's all these people around. I'm just thinking about getting to the next aid station. And sometimes I try not to look at my watch as much as possible. So I actually fell behind on my electrolytes. That could be one reason why I started cramping. Like I just wasn't paying attention to the time and I'm like, "Oh, it's about that time, I think." And I look and I'm like way behind. Electrolytes are one of those things that you can't really catch up with. You have to stay on top of. And I paid for the price in the last section of the race, and that is why legs are cramping. But that is also something that my fuel would normally look like. I just didn't quite this time. So, how do you get better at fueling? My track starts to shut down after 5 hours. So, actually, yeah. So, once you're at like 1, you're at elevation, 2, you're going for that long of duration, 5 hours or longer, 4 hours or longer, you're going to need to practice. Your body isn't going to know what to do unless it has practice doing it. As silly as that sounds, is like the more times you can get in a run that's over 5 hours, that's perfect practice for your GI tract. But if that's not something that you're willing or you're able to do on a regular basis, there are few things that you can work on in terms of training the GI. So you want to start with varieties. So use the powders, use the gels, use the chews, and have a good variety of what you can handle. So once your GI tract starts going south, maybe try a different form of nutrition. That is a good way to try it. Also, if you're running harder than you can digest, your body can only digest so much when you're running at a high intensity. So lower your intensity, let your GI tract digest the food and the nutrients before you try to pick up the pace again. So maybe go slower whenever you leave an aid station and you're eating something. Now, getting back to that aid station though. So the bigger the bolus of food you have at one time, if you just start eating a big burger, big quesadilla, you start eating a whole bunch at a time, that's going to shut down your GI tract. It's just going to sit there. All of your blood flow is going to your muscles and not for your digestion. So we want to avoid having those big boluses of food. So I like just taking like 10-calorie bites, right? So, like those 10-calorie snacks. So if you just sip on your carb mix and then you get like 10 calories here, 10 calories there, 20 calories there, but it's little bits at a time, it's going to do better in your GI tract. Another reason, back to that real food. So, real food later on in the race is going to be harder and harder to digest. So, I would say if you really do that real food during those long runs, during those long races, do that in the beginning of the run and then focus on the second half of the run or after 5 hours. Focus on the faster digesting, low volume, high carbohydrate fuels, being the powders, being the gels, being the chews. The concentration of those actually really matter as well. So there are different ratios of different types of sugars. Different types of sugars could be glucose, fructose, sucrose, and maltodextrin is another, just a combination of those. Some of the gels will have maltodextrin and fructose ratio. They'll have those together. Some of them will have glucose and fructose. So maybe some people don't do well with the maltodextrin. That is actually pretty common. If you can get a fructose and a glucose type of gel or product, that will work better for you, or vice versa. Maybe you are one of those people that need the maltodextrin and the fructose ratio. Usually it's like 1 to like zero point 0.8 is usually what that ratio is. And I think that's what cis beta fuel is. That's what that one is as well. So yeah, you just have to look at the nutrition facts and see if you can't find a pattern. Like every time I take one of these gels, my stomach goes south and I start having diarrhea. Or every time I take this type of chew, I just want to vomit. So look at the ingredients because it might be the ingredients themselves. Last one I was going to talk about on shutting down your GI tract, it could do to body heat. So if your body is getting overheated, there's two things that you can try to do to cool it. One, you could have, let's actually go with the most common. You're actually just hot. The sun is beating down on you. It's a hot day outside. So if you can cool down your body temperature, if you can get something cold on your neck, in your palms, on your arms, wherever you can get your skin exposed, try to get that cooled down with some sort of cold water or ice cubes. Ice bandana is a good one. Putting ice in your hat is a good one too. You might want to just cool yourself off, and that will also help your digestion. But you could also be overheated because your electrolytes are off. If you don't have enough electrolytes, it actually helps heat regulation. So if you are running out of electrolytes and you lose the ability to produce sweat, that is a really good indication that you're overheated and you're not going to be able to digest either. So, if you start seeing sweat drying on your clothes, if you start seeing sweat drying on your face and you have those crusties or you have those white marks on your clothing, that's an indication that you are very dehydrated and you need to focus on getting in electrolytes and getting in sodium and getting in water as soon as possible. Okay, so those are the tips I would say with getting better at fueling is one, practice, and then all those other things that I listed. All right. So the next one is fueling considerations for high altitude. Very similar to what I was saying on the previous slide. Those things are going to help tremendously. For specifically high altitude, you aren't going to be able to digest as well. So I would say get in what you can and do little sips at a time. My go to and what I suggest is using liquid fueling when you're at higher altitude. Your body isn't going to digest real foods. So I would say start with liquids. Gels are good, possibly choose depending on how fast your body can digest those things. That's what I would go for because you have to be taking in hydration at a higher rate than you would at a level. You're going to need all that liquid anyway. So might as well get your carbs and your liquid at the same time and getting in electrolytes because you're going to get more dehydrated. You're going to lose a lot of hydration and liquid from your body through respiration, through heavier breathing. You're going to be losing about 15% more than you would at normal levels. So you need to actually increase your electrolytes as well. Increase the amount of fluid, increase the amount of electrolytes. And I would avoid the like full-fledged foods and stick to something that's faster digesting, and packs more punch for the volume that it has, so higher concentration of things. A gel has more carbs than a banana. Banana takes up more space than a gel, and that's what I mean by the concentration. Specifically, Bryce Canyon 30K being the first trail race ever. I'm so pumped. Vacation races on awesome races. And it looks like the elevation for that race, too. It starts at 7,000 feet and then it climbs. The first 6 miles are a steady climb up to 2,000 feet. So that's like 2,100 meters. Oh gosh, I don't really know the conversion off the top of my head. Yeah, so it's going to be a good climb. And I would say just be patient with yourself. You're going to be breathing a little bit harder. You may or may not be able to run. That's okay. Just power hike that sucker all the way up. It's easier to take in food as you go up than it is to go down. So it looks like the race course is actually like an up, down, and then it's the finish line. So you have like two climbs in that race. The first one being the biggest climb, and then one more smaller climb as you descend for a little bit and then climb back up and then go back down to the start line. So I would say hike on the way up, run the downs if you can, jog the downs if you can, and just make sure that by the time you get to the top of the climb, that you are sufficiently fueled so you can just focus on footing on the way down, uh, on that first climb and that first descent. Same thing with the second. I would say just same thing. Go up nice and steady. Don't overpower it. Race doesn't start until halfway point. So think of it at that base of that second climb. That's going to be your halfway point about of how it breaks down for Bryce Canyon. And then that's where the race really starts. So fuel on the way up and then cruise into the finish line, for that next half. So that's what I would consider fueling considerations for higher health altitudes is increase water, increase electrolytes, and food isn't necessarily going to go down very well. Nausea actually is really common when it happens at high altitude. So I would say take some sort of nausea medicine. So over the counter, you can get Emitrol. Emitrol is really good for just kicking the nausea right in the butt. Uh, have that in your pack at all times. And then another thing you can try is ginger chews or have pieces of ginger, not quite as common, but have some sort of ginger that will settle the stomach. Give it a little time. So if you do start vomiting in these high altitudes, give your body like 45 minutes to reset. Just steady move forward. You don't have to go very hard. Don't push yourself at this point. Just let your body reset. Take in small sips of water, just to get your body reacclimated to taking things in. And then if you're tolerating that really well, try to get in more with calories substance. If you happen to come to an aid station at this time too, try liquid broth. Broth at aid stations are super, super great. A lot of times they have veggie broth, sometimes they have beef broth, sometimes they have chicken broth. Try to get in that broth because then you get the electrolytes and the hydration, and it just kind of cleanses the palate a little bit from taking in all that sugar. How often do I strength train? So I did mention a little bit earlier on the strength training. So I like to strength train 3 days a week, and that's what I typically have my runners do until they get to the higher volume. Then the strength training comes down to 2 days. And then at the very, very end, it goes down to 1 day, but it's still like a good training session. That's what I would recommend. I personally keep 3 days all the way up till 2 weeks before the race, and then I taper it back a little bit because I do wanna be fresh and tapered for the race itself. But I have athletes that do 4 days, and I have athletes that do 2 days, and that's totally fine. It's whatever works for you and your schedule. So that kinda goes to the next question of, like, strength training on and running on the same days. A lot of times we are busy people, right? We have families, we have commitments, we have work, we have social life, and we're trying to balance it all. So it may not be possible to do running and strength on the same day. However, that is ideal. The philosophy behind that is hard days hard, easy days easy. So if you're constantly doing something hard every single day of the week, hard run, hard strength, hard run, hard strength, your body is never going to get the rest and recovery that it needs to actually sustain that. So that's why hard days hard, easy days easy. Now, if you can get run and strength in on the same day, it is best to split them up. So it's run in the morning, strength in the evening. Run always comes first because that's typically what we're working on doing ultra marathons. We're typically working on our running, not necessarily like, bodybuilding. So run comes first, strength comes second. Ideally split like morning, afternoon, morning, evening, that type of split. However, you can do it back to back. So run and then go home and do 15 minutes of strength. Better than nothing. Do that. Awesome. Perfect. Uh, if that is not the case, if you cannot do that, I understand. So, which in that case, I would say about 60% of runners, that's the case. That is just not doable. So, what I do in those situations is hard day, the next day would be a strength day, the next day would be a rest day, and the next day would be a hard run day. Just so it does give your body that extra day to recover, and then you can actually push hard on that hard run day. So if you're going into the runs sore, you're not going to be able to push hard enough, get to the right intensity. Your legs aren't functioning. If you feel like lead, if you just feel super heavy, you're not going to get to the correct intensity in the run. And then therefore the run isn't as productive as it could have been. So I would say it is best to split it up with a rest day before a run day, a hard run day, if not a recovery run. So let's say you do have like to do some sort of strength and run on the same day, but you just did a hard run and then you do a strength session. You can do with like a 30 minutes recovery on that same day, but if the strength comes first. So that's another caveat. If you still want to get in the volume and you still have time, add in like 30 minutes, 45 minutes of a recovery run after the strength session, and that could work too. And last but not least, would you recommend Flagstaff Crest 39 as your first ultra? And can a beginner do this? Of course. Oh my gosh. So I looked up some statistics too. So Flagstaff Crest 39 has a 27-hour cutoff. So that means you can go at a 1.5 mile per hour. So that's a 42-minute mile for 39 miles. That would take you 27 hours. Now, 27 hours is a long time to be on your feet. So I would say, okay, well, if you are going to hike it, let's say you do take 5 hours of rest. That 5 hours of rest, so then that means you're going to have 22 hours of moving time, which is still a long time, granted. Um, 22 hours of moving time, that's still less than 2 miles an hour. That's like 1.9 miles an hour. It's like a 33-minute pace. Totally doable. So if your first one, awesome, you have a generous cutoff. That's one thing that I look for. And it's hiker friendly, absolutely. So if you wanna do this as a hiker, you can totally do this as a hiker. If you wanna do this as a hike kinda jogger, you can totally do that too. Now, because it is, I would recommend it as a first ultra just because how runnable it is. So yes, it's at higher altitude. So you're starting at 600 feet up to 7,400 feet, but it's runnable. It's typically flat. So I think the average grade, like if you're on a treadmill and you put the incline up, 3% is like the average grade of the entire run. Now, there's one section that there is a steeper grade, like a 15% grade for 400 feet. So it wasn't a crazy climb. I think I was looking around and everybody was walking that climb. So that's totally acceptable too. So as your first ultra, super runnable. The rest of it was cruisy pace. Like I was just cruising and feeling really good throughout that entire thing. So yeah, I think it's definitely a good one for a first ultra. They have awesome aid stations. They have a generous cutoff time. And it's really all right. That is actually all that I had for Flagstaff Crest 39 mile 39. That's funny. Thank you for all the questions. Follow me on Instagram, hook up with me there, shoot me a DM if you're interested in coaching. That's a good place to reach out to me and get in contact with me. Thanks for listening and peace.